if you would do me a favor and be mindful to, if you're asking a question, to really like stand up and project your voice so that anybody that's in can hear us. And if there's any question, I'll repeat it. So, hi, yes,
Can I move this back so we have more space?
absolutely.
Okay. I totally agree.
Well, hi, I'm Candia. I will be moderating the session. Our lovely Melody Marco is probably listening now. Hey, girl, hey! Her flight got grounded out of Denver. She's super bummed. She was solo that she couldn't be here. So, since I was kind of rallying the groups of producers of the panel for CBS team that I'm on, it was kind of a no-brainer to jump in and moderate. So bear with me. This was her baby and I'm gonna do my best. But the good thing is we have three amazing panelists here that will not let me fail. So, welcome to Leadership and Succession, Burnout and what else am I?
Rage quitting.
How to avoid rage quitting. So let me introduce you to our panelists. We'll start here at the end. This is Michael Cooper. For the past 7 years, Coop has been the mayor of Comfort and Joy, most known for their Dayglow Courtyard, Afterglow Play Space, 4-story tall Tiara, Thursday night drag shows, Pink Gym, and the largest gym on the playa, Powder Room, Drag Boutique, ooh, Cuddle Dome, hey. I'll come over to you guys. When he started this role, he did almost all the critical roles in camp. But by the time he retired last year, he had split his role into 7 jobs and had 42 leads reporting to him. Damn, Boo! When he started his camp, had an 80% turnover rate, and now they have a 30% turnover rate. He's most proud of the succession plans they've put in place, with all 42 leads having identified a replacement that they are actively training. With all this new structure in place, he will get to spend this year at Burning Man relaxing, hopefully. Oh my God, you get to go to Burning Man. Oh my God. And next to me here, this is Mr. Brian. Oh, sorry, it's a nice Brian Bosworth, aka Boz. Will be returning to Black Rock this year for his 7th burn and his 6th with Mud Skippers Urban Decay Cafe. Best known for the Fruit Smoothie Cafe, Nail Salon, Naked Bar Crawl, and yes, infamous Crack and Whack Whitney Houston tribute party. Dude, I'm gonna go to Burning Man this year. Houston had a little tribute party just last year. He became the camp lead after their prior camp lead
roughly step down.
So today's panel is a very relevant topic to him. And over here, this lovely queen, we have Miss Rose Goldthwait. Rose Goldthwait.
It's 5 consonants in the Rose! Just call me Rose.
Rose is the creative director and camp coordinator of Pink Bandit. On Playa, they are daytime sound camp and full bar, and off Playa, they are a non-profit music and arts collective with a focus on house music and inclusivity. This will be her 10th consecutive year on Playa, and her 9th in this role. Over the last 10 years, Pink Mammoth has gone through some major growth, both on and off Playa, and Rose has helped them create role systems and system upgrades along the way that have helped them expand smoothly with surprisingly little stress. So, let's jump in. I think the best place to start is a broad stroke. There are 3 we can answer the question of what leadership roles has your camp developed and why is it relevant? Coop.
We develop new roles every year. We delete roles every year, that sort of thing. Last year we had a mayor's office, and there were 7 vice mayors. We had a vice mayor for outside services. They dealt with all of our contracting for outside vendors, that sort of thing. one for programming, one for our kitchen. We serve 3,500 gourmet meals over the week in a tent with untrained labor, which is a very difficult thing to do, but it's, I always say it's the best kitchen on Playa.
Is that your in-house kitchen or is that public?
It's our in-house kitchen. We view our camp as a mutual support society, and we have, I call it a 12-ring circus. But we have leads of each of those 12 rings, and they're self-contained teams, and then the kitchen supports all of that, is how we set it up. And we've had everything from vice mayor to collaborations with other camps, to, you know, we've obviously got our water and our infrastructure. One of the things that we created that, being a gay-centric camp, we don't have Build Week, we have Erection Week. Vice mayor for erections. And then we, last year, the one thing we did was we started a new role that's the strike lead that really took a ton of work off of our other infrastructure folks. So those are the main ones that we've created in the last couple of years.
Fantastic.
Great.
Boz, would you like me to repeat the question? You got it.
No, I got it.
Okay.
So our camp is also fairly decentralized. We also have we have like about 7 what we call our senior leads, and nobody wanted to be president, nobody wanted to be lead. But vice president sounded way too formal and corporate, so we're all presidents of vice. Like I'm presidents of vice membership and orientation. We've got president of vice, you know, sustenance, SAS, and safety, you know, so et cetera. We actually also have a director of erections as well. Yeah, we try to decentralize it a lot so that everybody's got committee underneath them, people that are helping them with whether it's food or build or anything like that. So that way we've always got people that are learning that role, so that if somebody needs to take a year off, there's always somebody that has at least somewhat of an idea of how that role is filled and how that fits into the larger leadership structure.
There's one I missed.
Yeah.
We also have a happy camper lead, and that's the person that does all of our interviews for new campers, handles all our direct and ticket sales, handles the survey afterwards. So their job is really to make sure the campers are happy, and then all the other leads are dealing with infrastructure, programming, and things like that.
Yeah. Ms. Rose.
So we are also fairly decentralized, but we have a board of directors that sort of are on and off Playa, and everything runs through us sort of at the end of the day. We make like all the final decisions, but I think of them as cells because they totally operate independently of each other, and within each cell there's like a hierarchy that I don't even know about. Like we have a bar cell, we have a build cell, we have strike cell, let's see what, we have a volunteer coordinator, and hugely important. And each of them kind of operate independently. So last year, as an example, sadly, our bar manager, his mother passed away unexpectedly just a few days before we were leaving for the Playa. And so because he had this group underneath him that was ready to support, everything was fine, and we ended up having a really smooth year, sadly. But yeah, operating independently is huge because then the actual other leads don't have to think about it. In the beginning, we used to do, you know, the 5 of us would do everything, and it's so much on your mind on top of your full-time job. And now I actually don't have to think about any of the things I used to think about, and I can communicate with the organization, Burning Man org, and deal with the other 100 million things that come up every day, and know that the camp is running smoothly without it. So.
Fantastic. I guess from there, how has the creation of leadership roles led to less stress for everyone and why? Kind of just answered that. Does anybody have anything to add?
Well,
Go ahead.
okay. Well, one thing I would add to that is when there's individual people working together, there's a lot less room for control freakism. Is there anybody here that's a control freak? Let the record show basically everyone right Right, exactly. And I think control freaks make really good visionaries, but it can be really challenging to have a control freak trying to control everything. So when you hand hand off jobs to individual cells or groups, people can take ownership. And then they're less resentful and they can really care more about what they're doing and feel recognized and seen for it. So one of the best ways to keep everyone happy is to honor their work and to give them.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think that one of the most important things we can realize as camp leads is that we're really not there to like be micromanaging the whole camp. If you do that, that is the recipe for how you will burn out in a couple of years and be done and never and year one. But you really have to look at yourself as a facilitator, and that you are there to help the other leads in your camp work together and identify areas where there might be overlap, where there might be gaps, where there might be conflict, where there might be areas of cooperation, and also to be kind of the liaison between your camp and the village that you're with and or with the org as a whole. And that if you're spending all of your time micromanaging every little part of how the bar is run or anything else, you're never gonna get anything done and you're gonna burn out. But if you focus on empowering your leads to then work with each other to kind of problem solve, everyone's gonna learn from each other and grow from each other, and everybody's gonna feel empowered and feel like they have ownership of the camp and its success.
Just to add to that, in the default world, I'm an executive coach, so I viewed my role as the camp lead as really a coach of all the leads. And my job was to convene the leads, to parachute in when they have problems or challenges or they're like freaking out, don't know how to do anything. But they really own the vision for their areas. And my job was to get out of their way and make sure they had all the resources that they needed. But otherwise, they were just completely on their own. And it allowed me to just, I was the host for our camp meetings every day, and I was the only person that knew everybody's name in the entire camp of 160 people. But I was the person they came to for when they needed something or they needed somebody, but otherwise, they were really running the show. And I think that if I tried to have any more control, I wouldn't have had an enjoyable experience, and they wouldn't have had an enjoyable experience. And so there's an old leadership adage: the best leaders create more leaders. And so early on, I really looked at my job of how can I actually create this mutual support society, create more leaders within the network. That way we have backfill when something goes wrong or somebody's out or those sorts of things. So I think if you can just wrap your head around it that way, it makes your job much more easier as a camp lead.
That really does lead right into the next one. And, you know, I'm sure you've all had those experiences, but like, how do you walk that line between being a control freak or an effective camp lead? Do you have moments where you see something going in a direction where you wouldn't do it that way, and they're gonna make mistakes and fall on their face, and you're gonna have to clean it up, so you wanna grab it and reel it back in, and like, what is that, or where is the trigger for you to wanna do that but not, and how's that process for them?
I love to let people fail. I mean, I but I also know that it is our job to pick it up and clean it up afterwards. And so instead of stepping in where, unless it's a safety issue,
Right.
or, you know, I can't tell you how many times we've had to move our afterglow tent like 10 feet this way because it didn't, you know, that's when you rally everybody and say, hey, we made a mistake. Let's all fix it together versus pointing fingers or that sort of thing. But like if you try to stop everything from going wrong, you're never going to be able to focus on the things that you really should be doing. And people are going to make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes turn out into amazing, beautiful things. So too much control will ruin that for you.
I think sometimes it's just about making small pushes, you know, of just like, you know, reminding them of a certain deadline or something that, you know, that had been agreed upon we were trying to accomplish. Or, you know, instead of dictating it to somebody or telling them how to do it, you just make suggestions as far as like, have you thought about doing it like this? Or, you know, in my experience, we had a problem when we tried it that way. What do you think about trying this? You know, just those little things to make them feel like they're more a part of the discussion. And who knows, sometimes when you do push back on some of their ideas, you realize that they were actually thinking about it in a very different way, and you might end up learning yourself.
And I'll also add finding the right person for the job is crucial. So you will micromanage someone if they're not doing it actually the right way, the good way. But then once you find those right people, you have to trust them. So actually just let them do it their way and give them ownership of it so that they can create something that, you know, would be different and probably better than if you tried to micromanage. Like, we have a placement manager who places people within our camp. And now I don't even have to think about, are we at capacity? How many RVs do we have? Do people know how to use their RVs? Like, it's such a huge thing to take off my plate because I just trust that Putnam has it all handled. And he's totally the right man for the job, and finding that person is really crucial.
I'll add on to that. We have a placement guy coming back this year, but last year we intentionally create in our back of house meandering paths. So it's not inviting for people to come in. You're not inviting police to come in off the street, those sort of things. And he put somebody's tent right in the middle of the path. And I had to make a snap judgment, like, okay, do we move this person who spent the last 3 hours setting up their tent, or do we just leave it? And I decided I was going to take one for the team, and I just announced in our camp meeting, look, I know there's a tent there. The reason it's there is so that it doesn't look as inviting from the outside. We're not going to move it. If you want to blame somebody, if you want to complain about it, come see me. No one complained after that, but if I had thrown the placement manager under the bus by saying, you know, you totally screwed up, we have to move this person, it would have ruined both of their experiences. What it ended up doing is the person that had their tent in the middle, they became an interesting focal point. He would hear everything that was going on in camp, and it actually made his experience a lot of fun because he heard things that he was engaged in conversations. People were saying, so it ended up turning into a beautiful thing. So if you allow that to happen versus trying to fix everything, I think sometimes you'll be surprised.
Yeah, it's important. We always say sometimes you gotta allow people to fail because that's where the magic is, right? I'll probably learn the hard way. I guess really, where do we want to go? We talked about how you guys manage leadership responsibilities on playa, but how does that differ from off playa responsibilities?
So we're a community, we do 6 to 8 fundraisers a year off playa. And we have folks we have artists, we have setup people. I'm the setup guy. I'm there, I'm gonna arrive every time first, I'm gonna get everything started, but I'm not gonna be there for breakdown, that sort of thing. So we have a kind of unwritten rules and responsibilities. And we have a lot of people that do the same thing on playa as off playa. But even when we do that, we make space for new volunteers all the time. We're constantly recruiting new volunteers. And so we had a party a couple weeks ago, and tonight we have a social for everybody who volunteered. Every time we do something and somebody volunteers, we really build in that time to thank them, to hang out, to have a social, to have food, those sorts of things. So it's constant recruitment, and then allowing people to learn what they've done on playa and bring it back to the things that we're doing off playa as well.
Recruitment and retention.
Yeah, always.
Funky concept. And then
No, yeah, we kind of do the same thing. We've got our directors of vice for social vice in various cities that always make sure that whenever we're getting new people that are interested, that those people in those cities know to reach out and to kind of introduce ourselves and kind of put a more personal face on our camp, bring them into any sort of fundraisers or crafting projects or anything that we're doing, so that by the time they're on the playa, they already have kind of a network of friends in their city that are part of our camp.
Yeah, we do something similar too, where we have a pretty big presence off playa, which is all fundraising just to get us back to Burning Man. Like, we're not for profit. But we have 3 essentially event planners that do all of our talent booking, and they're looking all over the world basically for cool places for us to play and new people to play with. And so those people are active on playa as well, but they're more of our like off playa people that are creating the events. But in every city, we always try and create a community, and we have a lot of people that reach out to us to camp with us. So we're like, start by coming to an event, getting to know each other, you know, volunteer if you want, and which is another good point, is people actually really want to help. And if you feel like you're under-resourced, you think you're under-resourced, it's possibly you just haven't asked for enough help. So every time we put out a call, yeah, it's hard to ask for help, especially as a control freak, so I highly recommend it.
I'll add to that. We have a volunteer recruitment team, and they said, we really want to have an open house. And I was like, oh God, really. And 35 people showed up because they wanted to volunteer and they wanted to plug in, but they just didn't know how to approach us. And so we learned that we weren't making it easy for people to volunteer and plug in and sort of thing. I was blown away. Of course, I was, said it was a bad idea, and then I had to keep my words after that.
Be wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess that being broken, really in that, then, comes down to, this is more in the line of like acculturation, but, an education. But have you educated the people in your camp on what Burning Man is, and isn't you create the least amount of stress, both pre and post fire? And if so, how do you accomplish it?
I have, so a few years ago, we started to notice the culture of Burning Man changing a little bit. There's a lot more people just throwing cigarettes on the ground, or even ashing on the ground, and not understanding that even ash is moved, actually. And we had, we wanted to really make sure that we were bringing in new people and virgins because we want everyone to have the experience, but how are we really making sure that they're getting what we're out here to do? So we wrote a camper expectation document that's like 1 million pages long, and it touches on everything from like, do you know how to clean the leak in the gray water of the RV you rented? Do you know, it talks about cultural appropriation, it talks about basically everything within the principles, and then all the idiomatic stuff that just comes up that you won't know unless you've been to Burning Man. So everyone has to read it and initial and agree to it before they're even allowed to continue their application to camp with us. And it's been really helpful because there's a lot of questions that arise just by offering that information in one space. So I think off-playa education is the most important. It's like where to start. And then people know what they're doing by the time they get there, and it's way less stress for all the leave because they're not putting out 1 million fires and putting buckets in their RVs. I mean, that still doesn't happen, but it really helps.
Show of hands, this document she's talking about is making weed rule. That's something
I want a copy.
Yeah.
My camp has 25 people and we have one of those.
Yeah,
And
really
it grew out of problems. It was like, okay, we need to address that problem next year, and then now I've gotten more forward thinking about it, and it's like, we added a whole page on consent, which we haven't had a problem with, but we would like to avoid having a problem with in the future, so, yeah.
If you, I don't know if you've gotta get the head nod from, your
Right.
campmates, but, if that is something that document is something that everybody would be willing to share with people in the room, do you wanna, just come up to Rose and, get her email or vice versa or something, so you can circle back, cause that's
Yeah, I'd be
really-
happy to share, for sure. It's, my email is rose@pinkmammoth.org, so anyone is more than welcome to email me. Or come up and say hi afterwards too, but you can email me if you want.
What was the email again?
rose@pinkmammoth.org.
Well, now let's
Yeah,
take
we're so fancy.
let's take the turn to,
Can I just add to that?
Yeah.
So camper acculturation is really important, but leader acculturation is also really important. And we've acculturated our leaders differently than our campers. And we have a core group. It's the mayor, the kitchen lead, the erection lead, the strike lead, and the programming lead are the kind of what we call our core group. And every year, one of the first things I say is, welcome to insanity. You've been shielded from all the crazy bullshit until now. Your primary role, number one, is to stay in a good mood and to handle all the shit so that people want your job later. If you make it look easy, people will want to step into your shoes. If you're haggard and a mess and an asshole, they don't want to step into your shoes later. And so there's a little bit more involved in our acculturation, but acculturating your leaders is just as critical as acculturating your campers, and the acculturation should be a little bit different, depending on the vibe that you have, depending on your brand, depending on, we've got people from 21 countries, all sorts of things you're dealing with, but your leaders really need to present something very, very similar as a cohesive group.
Can I jump in there?
Sure.
So the documents pushed out by the Cultural Direction Setting Group contain some really interesting census data that I hadn't seen before. Relevant to this discussion, 41% of campers at Burning Man are in camps that are less than 25 people. So in a camp of less than 25 people, you just named 5 leads on your leadership team.
Yeah, we have 42 leads. So.
How does a camp get from 10 people to greater than 50 people? What does that interim stage look like in terms of leadership and succession planning? So for example, our camp has, I'll call it 10 core people, and every single one of those 10 core people is working equally, which is great, but I don't know how to train people to do the specific parts of the job that the leader needs to do. We've already delegated, we've already shared out the work. How do you identify the people who want to have a bigger role and then train for that?
That's a fantastic question. Go for it.
Well, it's tough because there is that, it's just like scaling a business. There's always that weird middle ground where you're like, we actually have no idea how our systems are going to adapt to this next thing. And I think that's where it gets a little messy. But that's also a good place maybe where you could start thinking of each lead as an individual cell.
There's nothing to lead, right? Like when you have 10 people, nobody's in charge of anybody else.
Well, even within your own self, you can take on a list of things that are your responsibility. So you become the lead of that, whatever those things are. And then when you start needing help, you can say, okay, I need somebody actually to deal with talking to, I don't know, outside services about water or something. I can't do that. So I'm going to enlist someone that said they want to help and give them that little job. And then all of a sudden, maybe you've just invented the outside services lead, and they can. So it's like finding things as necessary to start creating the cells. That's what's worked for us anyway.
And like you were saying earlier, like you find people that are good at doing that sort of work.
Right.
You know, that there's always going to be people that naturally are good at doing certain types of tasks, and there's going to be people that you know. I often, when people come up to me and they're like, "Hey, we need to solve this," I'm like, "Great, thanks for volunteering."
We're not having a complaint about it.
Right.
Sounds like you want to lead that.
Exactly. You feel
I'm
passionate
gonna
about it.
ask one more question and let them get like the breath of that answered, and then we're gonna open up the
Can
questions.
I just add one thing to that?
Yeah.
I know to go from 10 to 50 or whatever size, that's like you said, it's scaling a business. But one of the things that I think everybody here, don't be afraid to say, I think you would be really great at this. Do you want to take that on? Instead of just hoarding it yourself. That's the best way to grow your team. Because a lot of times people aren't going to come out of the woodwork and say, you look busy, I want to help you. They're going to sit back and think, okay, I don't know what to do. And I can't tell you how many times one of our campers, Scott Pando, was like, he loved building fires at night. I was like, you know what would be really cool? It'd be really cool if you built us a cauldron next year. And he's like, fuck, I have no idea. And he met with Michael Brown of Dust City Diner, and they designed this whole thing and built it from scratch. And he'd never done any welding or anything else. And it's just because I had the guts to say, I think you'd be good at this, right? And so just think about everybody, particularly the people that maybe aren't working as hard as you are. What would they be good at? What do you see that they, like, what gift do they have? And, you know, sometimes you tap people and they say, absolutely not, I can't do it, and that's okay. But 90% of the time, they're craving to be asked to do something. And I used to be afraid to ask, and now I'm the exact opposite. You come to one of our parties and I see you more than twice, and I'm like, oh, what are you really interested in? What would you like to do? I think you'd be great at this. And so I've really started facilitating that along the way.
Playing to people's strengths, essentially. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really a good takeaway.
The other thing
Everybody
is,
stays a purpose.
I like to give, whenever someone asks me what they want to do, I like to see that as an opportunity for them to step into leadership.
Yeah.
If I say, do this thing, but I don't want you to do it, I want you to go find some people to do that.
Great.
And push it out so that they're starting to get that experience.
The other thing is, if you're in a small camp, and our camp grows anywhere between 30 to 90 people sometimes, depending on how much we drink that year. But don't be afraid to create problems in pursuit of your vision, because it's a positive thing to have. Like if you are like building something grand, and you don't have enough people, that's fine. It's a problem for you and your existing team to solve. Is bring in more people, and then you can assign more leads and so on and so forth.
Last question, and then we're just gonna round table this bitch. Right? How did your camp rally together after your lead of many years burnt out? Like, what did that process look like? Was it messy? Was it pretty and all organized and reinventing the wheel?
Yeah, so in our camp last year, we basically had a camp where there was basically one person running the show, mostly because he was a self-defined control freak. He had a few people on it helping him out, but after many years of doing that, you know, the inevitable happened and he burned out. And I'd like to say pass the torch, but it was more like he threw the torch in the living room and told said somebody better pick that up. And none of us, it was like hot potato, changing metaphors, because nobody wanted to pick it up. So, you know, 10 of us decided that we were going to, as a collective group, go in and pick this thing up, and because we wanted the camp to move forward. We wanted to keep going, we wanted to keep this legacy going, and it was important to us. So that's when we kind of divided up the roles, and we just decided, you know, none of us would be willing to step in and do the job that this person was willing to do, but all of us had a part of that role that we could see ourselves filling. So we started working around that, and yeah, we went through some growing pains of like, oh yeah, that person, maybe they think they want to do that job, but they're not very good at that job. So we're going to take part of that job and give it to this person. Now they work together, and oh, great, now they're helping each other. So we're doing that. So that's really kind of what we do off the playa. But the other thing we also realized is that when we get on the playa, none of us wanted to be the camp lead at the playa, because then it was like, we know that this person would basically spend 90% of his burn at the camp, and we're like, none of us want to do that. So we invented this role that we call Camp Mom, and so on the playa, we each take a 4 to 6 hour shift of being the camp mom. And that everything goes through that person. They are the lead for the camp. And we put it on the marker board in the dining hall where everybody can see who is the camp lead for that time. It's usually a time that they already would have to be there already. Maybe they're leading the coffee tasting, or they're doing a cafe or something like that. And then we have this little thing, which I will try to find a way of sharing this with you too. It's our dusty little helper. And the Camp Mom book has everything in it the camp lead would need. They have the map of the camp, all the contact information for people, who's coming when and where, what shifts are going, what happens if your generator craps out. We have, like, you know, where you take the recycling when it's done. Everything's in here. And then what we've done, and this is because I'm very anal, I would not expect everyone to do this. I took every shift that somebody's gonna work, and there's one sheet for you, and it tells you everybody, like, who's arriving, who's leaving, what camps you're working, how many things of ice you're going to need to go get for your party so that you can run it. So that basically that camp lead, for one day, I have one person every day learning what it's like to run a whole camp, so that someday when they have to run the whole damn thing, they've got a taste of it. So
Fantastic.
yeah.
Operation Training Wheels.
There you go. Everyone has a chance.
There's something very similar. We call it day manager, but we got to a point where we've been on the fly for 17 years, and we got to a point where we had so many leaders that really wanted to step up, but there weren't proper roles for them. So now day manager is, if we see you really, like, if you run the Cuddle Dome, you did an amazing job for 3 years, we ask you to be a day manager. And so it's by invitation, but it's an honor for the camp. And then we do a full-on training of, you know, you're the representative for the day, you're talking to the cops, you're doing everything you need to do, right? But we also give them extra, not only acculturation, but extra training around communication, that sort of thing. So that they feel like they're really owning the camp that whole day. And then in our meeting, we do a meeting every morning and every night, just quick announcements, that sort of thing. We let everybody know who the day manager is or the night manager, and so everything is funneled to them. So the mayor, I didn't have to do any of that stuff the last couple of years. It's actually really kind of amazing.
Wow.
And then we had 14 people that are trained to step into higher leadership roles, that sort of thing.
Well, we actually haven't had anyone burn out and leave yet. We have our camp director that's been going 20 consecutive years.
Wow.
He keeps threatening that he's not going to come, but it just gets easier and easier because our systems are so good, so he keeps coming. So we haven't actually had that issue
Amazing.
yet. Yeah, so it's possible.
Wow. It's like me, I'm staring down the barrel of a gun with 2.5-year-olds, and I'm like, oh fuck. they're gonna start school. That's the thing.
Oh, man,
That's
yeah.
the break that time. That's that window. Okay.
And then you have some really awkward conversations with their teachers. It's fun.
Awesome. So this is what's coming. Great.
I have one last thing. Sorry to keep jumping.
That's fine.
We at 11 years in, we had the leader of our camp and our founder got to the point where he was like, I need lots of help, but wasn't making space for people to help him. Eventually, I had to literally push him out of the role. And thankfully, I built up enough trust with everybody in the community that they rallied around me to take the role. So it wasn't a rage quit or anything like that, but it was, hey, we've got to make a transition. We have to, for his mental health and safety, and for everybody else, we have to. And so that's that. You know, if you're stepping into a role new, ask for that help, ask for that support. Don't be afraid to. Don't think you have to be so damn strong and you've got everything figured out as a camp leader. Those are the ones that I am terrified of, because they're the ones who aren't willing to be vulnerable, who aren't willing to be honest about their capabilities, who aren't willing to ask for help. Those are the ones that I guarantee you are on a path to burnout and on a path to not having the support around them necessary to sustain the camp past a couple of years.
Let's open it up for questions.
Actually, I just wanted, I'm sorry. I wanted to throw out a suggestion to everybody, which is, you got sort of a book of institutional knowledge there. Don't just prepare that when you're planning to have new camp leaders. Have that on file all the time. I became my camp leader when our camp leader had to be medevaced out on Monday. And it's like, who's in, oh, you're next, there you go. And we didn't know where the porta potty certificates were. We didn't know anything. So when I became the camp lead and built an organization around me, we developed sort of an institutional network, and everybody in that network knows where the book is and where the stuff is, and we have a meeting like you guys do every morning and every night to sort of bring everybody up to speed. But there's redundancy built into the system. Otherwise, somebody cuts themselves on some rebar and your camp falls apart.
Speaking of redundancy, we literally printed 2 copies, and I'm glad we did, because there was always one time when one copy was locked in an RV or who knows where, lost in the dust. So, redundancy is good.
The Department of Redundancy Department.
Right.
Yes, I would just ask the questions, just speak up so that people at home can hear them.
There's so many questions that I could ask right now, but how do you deal with people who drop the balls? So there's lots of conversations in our camp about like letting people fail, but also like there are certain departments like water that's like an unacceptable thing for failure. So where do you find that balance and also keep that conflict alive so that creative solutions can come from?
Select leaders who aren't going to drop the ball, first off. I mean, sometimes it happens and it's an emergency, but for our camp, to be a leader is, I had to know you had to camp with us for years, I had to trust you, I had to know that you weren't going to drop the ball before I would really entrust you with a role. Like leading the kitchen or the water or those sorts of things. Now, other roles, it's fine, and here's the thing. I always said, we planned a huge set of programming, that sort of thing, but the reality is 30% of it doesn't happen. Right? Like, if we get to 70%, it's amazing. And the other 30%, nobody has to know about it. They drop the ball, sometimes it's not a big deal, it doesn't matter. Only on the big things does it really matter. And then you need that succession plan, you need backups, you need, I always, when we do any program, any volunteer work, we have double the number of volunteers it takes to complete the task, at least. Yeah. And everybody's trained on how to do it, so you have that redundancy built in.
I also think checking with each other is really important, and knowing what people's strengths and weaknesses are, even if you know they're a badass at the job. Like, I am really bad with dates, which is funny because I do all the planning and pretty much Burning Man is all about dates and not missing deadlines. So Joe, who is our camp director, will be like, hey, did you make sure to fill out this thing? Or, we'll make sure that John ordered water for the bar. Like, knowing these main things, you cannot drop the ball with water or something else, and then just check in and make sure that it's all happening so far in advance that there's no way you can fail, and trusting the people that are doing those jobs.
Yeah, I have a question about, I don't know, come on, a question about, actually twofold, about, one, showing, vulnerability as a leader, and like perhaps not always having the answer. And the second thing is, does anybody have any like tools, tactics, whatever, or actually talk about that, part of it is putting in the systems, like we're talking about a lot of systems you can put in place, like spreadsheets for, being ready for the burn, but how about what are some models for showing up in a way that's friendly, relaxed, and isn't just like false positivity?
That's a great question.
So there are a couple components to your question.
Yeah. Showing up as a leader.
Showing your vulnerability.
What do you do to show up as a leader? How
I
does
think
that
a big one is, well, there's two parts of that for me. One is getting curious instead of making assumptions or being demanding, or there's always room for curiosity and it always disarms defensiveness. So if there's a conflict, actually asking questions, trying to get all the information before you jump to an emotional conclusion, which everyone's emotional, it's a million degrees, everyone's brains are fried. It's really easy to not be compassionate, but starting with curiosity is a good way to do that. And I think the second thing about leadership is to get your ego out of it. So I think that's another thing that causes a lot of resentment within camps is you can tell when somebody's in the position of leadership because it's blowing up their ego, or it's like a part of, they want to be seen as that role, and so they're not coming from a place of having the authenticity or like the best interest of the camp necessarily either. So I think those are two qualities of being a leader. You can be a totally vulnerable leader and have, say you don't know the answer, but if you're doing it in a compassionate or curious way, then everyone can work together to figure it out.
To that exact end, I've always really loved answering questions I don't know by saying, I don't know, let's find out together. It's a great way to draw people into helping problem solve and maybe potentially finding new leadership that's up and coming, that might be a new member that has questions that are legitimate.
Yeah, your job as the leader is not to know everything, but to know who does.
Yeah.
or to know the group of people who will discover it.
So I want to kind of break down a lot of what was just said into a really bite-sized, perfect list of things that I hear. And this is kind of how great leadership and CEOs operate companies. I've been a CEO my whole life. We run a camp. It operates amazingly well. We have a similar experience to you. We're like 20 some odd years. We never really have these types of problems, 60 people. But it seems to me that what we do, or what a good leader usually does, is you kind of identify talent and needs. You identify needs that you have. Then you identify the talent and who can do those needs, because you don't necessarily know what they are, right? So then you find those people. Then you basically delegate and empower them to do what they need to do. And then you basically reward them by appreciating them, and you listen to things that didn't work, and you do a feedback loop and start that over. That can cause you to scale. That can cause you to get bigger. That could cause you to not have to take on the responsibilities of everybody, but by basically delegating those things out.
I want to defend my 10% camp.
This is when you're like 50 or 60 plus.
I'm not here because I'm doing all the work. I'm here because I'm not doing all the work. I'm very proud of that fact. But also, last year I said, hey, I'm taking 2019 off. We're planning ahead for this. I'm taking 2019 off. I'm going to make sure that someone else in this camp knows how to do every single thing that I do. I need someone who wants to learn how to file a placement application. Who wants that? Crickets. I need someone who's really interested in drawing the layout. You all have great feedback every year. Someone wants to do crickets. So then now you're in a position not just of I think you'd be really good at, but I'm going to throw this torch on the floor. What actually happens there?
Sounds like you need new people.
I was gonna say you need to reach out for more people, because we have the opposite problem. We have people who want to do everything all the time.
I think if you had like the full context, and I'm not going to make this session about me. I think if you had the full context, that's not actually the issue. So.
So this lovely lady keeps doing this, so I'm gonna let her go first.
Yeah,
Go.
so my question is, I would say maybe seasonal burnout, because I suffer from what I affectionately call post-playa depression.
Oh,
And want literally nothing to do with my camp, with Burning Man, for pretty much, I would say, like September to like November, and then I start getting excited again.
Yeah.
That's great.
January
or February.
And so that's where I feel like I struggle as a leader, because people are like, let's have, you know, a debrief, let's like plan for next year, and I'm like, fuck all of you guys. I'll see you in the winter. And so like, how do you deal with that kind of more seasonal like kind of element?
We make quite a party, actually. So I run a camp of 175 people. I run Orgy Dinner. And when we have our when we run our post-playa like debrief, we actually have a party up in either San Francisco or Sacramento. 50 people show up, and we sit around and we got what worked, what didn't work, who's going to do what, who did good here, who didn't do good there, and it actually makes it much more enjoyable. And it's not really about being at Burning Man. You're not dusty. We do it in a nice hotel, but it really makes it a lot easier not to get burned out.
Does it break out into an orgy after?
It does.
That's why.
Everybody shows up. From like when all shit is done, like we have to send a post-playa survey. We collect the feedback, we send that back out to our camp, and then we close our leadership team from like October 15th to Jan 1. Where we don't have any meetings, we don't do any work. It's actually our like off time. And there's some groups that work on some stuff, and we actually just did our second annual retreat in January, where the whole leadership team gets together in person, because our team is distributed across the country, and so we come to one central location and review what happened last year and plan for the next year. And we've done that twice, and it's worked out really well, and it's really helping with burnout.
Yeah, we did the same thing where we send out a quick survey just a week or two after the burn, so we can get feedback from the whole camp on like what we did well, what didn't go so well, what people thought, and then also to get a pulse on what the camp would like to do next year in terms of events or things while it's still fresh in our minds. And then again, like nothing else until we wait until decompression, when there's that little blip of like, oh yeah, I could do this a little bit, and we use that little bump of excitement to have one meeting that's the only meeting we have between Exodus and the first of the new year, and that's where we kind of look at those survey results, kind of talk about like what we need to kind of be planning for and thinking about for next year, and then literally we just put pins in that and we don't touch that until after the new year.
There you go, see? New rule, manage expectations.
Can I add? The seasonal depression is real, right? And so a couple years ago, we noticed that we had a huge drop off in activity, and we had a lot of people who were kind of struggling, personally, emotionally, that sort of thing. And so 2 or 3 years ago, we instituted our own decompression in the city, and we hang out. We also send out a newsletter encouraging everybody to stay in contact, particularly if people fall off the radar, because it's usually an indication that they're burnt out, they're struggling, that sort of thing. And then we also have a fundraiser a couple weeks after the burn, and we also participate in decompression. And so one of the things we do is we ask the folks that don't go to the burn, because we have a community year round, to help us with the decompression thing, so we don't have all our burn folks burning out, that sort of thing. And we use the setup for the next big fundraiser as a way to really check in. We ask for more volunteers that day, we buy more food for volunteers, and we use it as a way to socially reconnect and support each other. So I think if you think about, okay, these things are real, how do we build in structures so that we help people, not only on the organization and programming side, but on the emotional support side? How to really think about that year round? I think you've come up with some really creative ideas to help in that at the end of the year.
I have one thing to add to that too. So one ththing that we do, my camp is smaller, we're usually around 20 to 25 people, but most of us come down from Seattle, so we have a long drive home, and we try and get people to group up in cars as much as possible. So one thing is, every car has a notebook and a pen. And on the drive home, just everyone lists off like top of mind. This worked, this didn't, write it all down. When you get home, send an email out to usually to me. Just these are all things we talked about, and we just file it away. when we do our decompression in like November, December-ish, we pull all that back out and say, this is all the stuff that we wrote down, what's still applicable, what needs to change. I think go over that way. That way we get it when it's still top of mind from everyone, and you have nothing better to do when you're driving 12 hours to Seattle.
Yeah, some of the best stuff we put down for our camp happened during the Exodus line, where we were like, okay, while we're sitting here, blah blah blah, and then best practices came out of that, and it was
So one thing that we find is really useful is you could do this per day, but have an auditor in your camp. Somebody who actually walks around to the different teams or just over the camp, takes personal notes about what seems to be working, what doesn't, and then at the end of the week or whatever, people, if 5 people have the same thing not working, maybe it's time to.
2 things. I guess this is for everyone here. If I could give you my email maybe at the end, but looking for very specific tools, maybe one being an inventory of all your items at camp, probably an Excel doc, but if anyone has a good inventory, like format,
You ever
and
taken an inventory
templates.
after being out there for 14 days?
Oh my God, yes.
What we did is this last Exodus, what we did is as we took stuff from the truck back into the storage unit, I made somebody at their job that I'm like, every 5 minutes, I want you to take a photo of what's in the storage unit. So that we literally have a build of what's in the storage unit, where it's roughly located. So
That's a great idea.
Okay.
It was a very easy way of taking inventory visually.
And I guess another thing is also, you talked about kind of roles and responsibilities and timelines, also kind of project management, tools, like what software, what are you using,
We use Google Docs. I have a big giant leadership folder, and every lead has got their own folder in it. And then it's a lot of Google sharing. We're always organizing meetings, and I use SurveyMonkey to do lots of surveys. That's how we do. SurveyMonkey is how I do half my work as a lead.
Slack is way better
Slack
than
is-
email.
Slack is a-
Yeah. What's the thing that you use to get to rally all the cats of can we just get a one fucking conference, Doodle?
Doodle.
Yeah, we use
Doodle.
Doodle.
Yeah, we use Doodle to schedule, and then we use Zoom to have the call. But we do have our leads call. I just got agreement from everybody on every second Sunday. We found 5 p.m. was great for Australia and New York to get on the same call. So every second Sunday from January through to burn. So.
Wait, are you saying you meet every week?
No, we have a Zoom conference every second Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah.
It starts in January too.
And that is, I created self-porn, girl.
And,
porn, and it's so, yeah.
We use I volunteer for all of our volunteer stuff. We use it for our parties throughout the year, and we use it on the playa, and it's I forget how many thousand hours of volunteer hours we have on the playa. It works really well. We break it out by teams.
So is that how you, my camp has 50 people, or going up to about 100 people this next go around, so,
Good luck.
Yeah,
That's a large competition.
That's a big
and
deal.
lots of people are coming back, so, and then we're having some new people, but most of the people we're just located in all kinds of different pockets, all over the place, so, I mean, we use phone calls to check in and make sure everybody's doing their thing, but is that how you guys coordinate? Because it sounds like you're mostly in one central location, and we're not really like that, so.
We're pretty spread out, so we use Zoom conference a lot.
So it's video.
Video conference.
Video chat.
We use Zoom. We have a community in San Francisco where we have 21 countries represented in the camp. And so the burn planning is all done online by Zoom and that sort of thing, but the local stuff is planned locally.
Yes, sir.
You guys touch upon strike and breakdown. That for us, that's by far the hardest. Everything else is great, but I'd love to hear.
Make everyone, as part of their agreement to be in camp, participate in strike, a minimum number of hours. And then we have a designated strike crew. And our goal every year is to have more people on strike than we had the year before. We're at 37 people, I think is our record now at the final group walk. But we tell everybody, skip the Exodus line, hang out with us, hang out with strike. We try to make strike fun. In the evenings, we have a big kiki around our cauldron and invite the cold queerhood over, that sort of thing. but we try to make strike as much fun as possible.
So you have FOMO for missing that.
Yeah.
We call our
And then
strike
we,
days.
you know, obviously take pictures and we celebrate and thank people and that sort of thing. But lots of messaging around strike from the moment you interface with us as a potential camper. We set that expectation multiple times, and it's grown every year.
So we have a much smaller camp for, so dealing with strike, it's everybody's responsibility, but I feel like setting up expectations ahead of time is important, and people knowing when things are happening, because we do our strike on Temple Sunday. So I tell everybody over and over again, starting now, Mandarin night is not your party night. You are up working at 9 a.m. on Sunday, no exceptions. And if you're not there and you're not doing it, you're not welcome to camp with us again. And I think a lot of people think they're not thinking ahead necessarily, especially new burners or people that are new to the camp, and they're kind of in this it's the last weekend party atmosphere, and they haven't really connected to the fact that they need to reserve the energy to handle their personal stuff and the camp's infrastructure as well. So also making it clear that strike doesn't mean you're striking your tent, and when your tent is done, you leave. Strike means you're up here working, and you better have logged in the time to deal with your own stuff before you have to go. And then if we do have people that are leaving early because they can't stay through Monday or whatever, we have certain items that go down on Saturday. And then there's the early strike team handles a couple, like our dome, which is kind of small, and a small crew can handle it. That goes down on Saturday, and then anyone who's leaving early, that's their job, and they know that in advance. So it's knowing when people are planning on leaving ahead of time helps, and then just really clear expectations about what's getting done.
So we use good old-fashioned bribery. Our camp dues are somewhat substantial, but part of our camp dues is what we call our MOOC deposit. And so what we do is if you stay through Monday, you get a percentage of that deposit back, and Tuesday you get a little bit more, and if you stay till the truck door is closed, you get a little bit more, and if you stay till the final MOOC sweep is done, we split up whatever's left over. It certainly helps. It's not a cure-all. We have a strike committee, so we've had the same guy running our strike for the last 3 years, and we've gotten really good at it. We haven't had any other than green on our MOOC map in years, so it's been really helpful. The bribery works.
I do want to just say one thing about that also, is that it also is dangerous to set up the expectation that if you're okay paying for something, you don't have to put the work in. I'm not saying that at all happens for you,
that's true.
but I think it's a really thin line and can be a dangerous precedent to make. So always be careful if you're, bribing people.
Sure. We had 70 for strike last year, so we stayed till Wednesday.
What do you do with if you have deposits left over for people that fucked up? What do you do with that?
Well,
Does it carry-
whatever deposits are left over, what we do is we break it down sort of by percentage, so by days. We generally take till Wednesday night to be gone, and we don't start tearing down Sunday during the day because the dome's open till Sunday morning. So we give the whole crew Sunday off. We throw a camp party Sunday night in the dome, and then Monday we start tearing down. But we have our own trailer. We have a 45-foot tractor and put everything in there. So
What do you do with the funds from deposits for MOOC that are left over?
those get divvied up based on a pro rata basis of who's left.
So the
So the number
refunded
gets
back to
bigger
the-
and bigger.
So you can
But
get back
the-
more than you put in if you stay till the end.
Yeah.
That is a golden egg. I would very much like to let you answer your questions. You've been so nice.
Does anybody have a written succession plan? Does it include things that not only who is going to be taking over what, but like resources that have maybe had to be put in the leaders' names? We own a truck, those things. If anybody has something like that, I'd be interested in how a written succession plan goes.
We have a very brief written succession plan. We have a very brief written succession plan, but we're a nonprofit, so all the assets have gone into the name of the nonprofit. So we have to and we ask for commitments of years. So our kitchen leader had to commit for 3 years, and then on the second year, she needs to find the person she's training year 2 and year 3 to take over. Our erection lead committed for 3 years. That sort of thing. Our mayor is now called our gayer. Our gayer had to commit for 2 years, that sort of thing. So
And so you find your replacement as you go.
you find and train your replacement on a specific year as part of the written agreement we have.
Okay.
Go.
It sounds like there's like camps of all different sizes here, right?
Yeah.
Do you guys find, I've always kind of wondered about this as far as participation, and you know, obviously we participate during the week, but there's always this idea of build and, you know, breakdown, and do you find that like you have people that are push that everybody does both, or like at least one, or you know, what do you guys find? Because in all the different sizes, I imagine maybe there's different solutions, but you know, I'm always kind of curious.
Everything has acculturation in it.
It is.
It really is. And it should, yeah.
What we've found is that like our camp's about 75, so we're in that kind of awkward middle stage. We're not quite big, not
Yeah,
quite.
that's
very
big.
small.
We're like
Yeah.
slightly more than that.
What
but
we
yeah,
found
so-
is that usually, when you've got a group about that size, we've got 20 or 30 people that really are builders and strikers, and there are engineers, there are all those people, and then we've got our people that are going to be like our barkers and like the people that are running our cafes and our stuff and everything like that. And so what we developed last year, and we're still experimenting with this, but we rolled it out last year of calling participation points. And the idea was is that everybody's giving, but giving in a different way. And some of that work is a lot tougher and a lot less enjoyable than some other work. So everybody in our camp is expected to achieve a certain number of participation points. Now you can do that by, if you're building or striking, you're getting a lot of points. But then you can use that to like be able to enjoy your burn week a lot more, because you've already kind of put in the time, or you're going to be putting in the time. Whereas the people that are just kind of coming and they're doing kind of the lighter shifts and the more stuff that's more fun, they actually have to put in more time to kind of make up for that balance of, you know, the fact that they're not building. The other thing that we do is that we do have an expectation that everybody helps with strike. Not everybody always helps with build, but everybody is expected to do a strike. You know, just like we just heard. Like if somebody's leaving on Saturday, great, they're taking down the shower on Friday. You know, we have all sorts of little jobs like that. But then also like those people that do, you know, don't do the hard work. There's always little jobs that need to be done, like the last little dishes in the kitchen that need to be done, or somebody needs to go bring down all the flags and fold them up and put them away. There's always those little jobs. So there's always something that somebody can be doing, especially for strike. So
Do you write it down? Like, is that written down though? That's what
we're
I
in
was
the
kinda
process
curious.
of writing that down. We're figuring it out.
Yeah,
Rough
sorry.
draft.
So what we did is the setup and strike teams are working together, not necessarily the same individual. So during setup, they'll have the very specific tasks under bigger themes. And so for strike, then we'll know exactly what was there for setup. They might not have been there, and exactly we put them on individual index cards. I'm leaving on Friday. Let me take 5 index card strikes and check them off. Make sure that everyone knows that they're done. So it's very clear, kind of the setup and strike specific tasks.
Good idea.
Yeah.
That's a good
I
idea.
would say one quick thing, if you're growing or you're going from 75 to maybe 100.
We're not. I did 115 a couple years ago.
We
when
did
I got
115. Right, so that doesn't apply to you.
85.
Right? So if there's anyone else in here that their camp is growing, definitely set the precedent in the beginning that everyone has to be there for strike, because everyone wants to come early. You get to go early entry and build, and it's like a private art show out there.
Early entry is your gift.
It's like a
Yeah.
privilege. So everyone wants to do it. So that's the easy part. Start early and getting people to really commit to breakdown and make it a thing, because otherwise it won't be.
Manage.
We use strike crew as
We
as
treat-
benefit for the build. We say, if you want to be on build, do strike this year. You'll get first consideration.
Really?
Yeah, that's one step further.
We treat each of the build week, the burn week, and the strike week separately. And build is for people who volunteered throughout the year for our fundraisers and who were really high contributors at camp, and it's a reward for their high contributions. Everybody who participates in strike has to do 8 hours, which is what everybody else does during build week. So it's the same, and then everybody has to do 4 hours of strike. So if you're build, your expectation is much higher. Like you have to do everything that everybody else does, plus you do the 6 days of build with us too. And we have more people applying for our build week than we can handle, because we learned a few things and actually made it fun and treat people well, that sort of thing. So you can get there, but it takes a while.
Yes.
I wanted to say that we've tried the money back thing that you guys do and found it not to be really effective. Mainly because it kind of commodifies the experience a bit, and you kind of are paying to like either do this or not do that. And particularly since, and particularly for strike, it seems to not work. Because again, like there's enough incentive. What you do sounded really interesting. I never even thought of that. I mean, if you want to build, which everybody wants to do, then you should probably strike the year before. But in our experience, it was really difficult to decide. Some people will stay on Monday, but they won't do much.
Right.
So it's really hard to go back to those people and go, hey, we can't give you your money back, you know, even though you stayed because you really didn't do anything. We didn't want to have that conversation.
We haven't really had that.
The other thing we're adding for next year is we had a bunch of people that their back of house, their personal infrastructure gets bigger and bigger every year. It takes them 12 hours to break down their personal stuff. So we're actually asking everybody this year to, your personal infrastructure, please don't build anything that takes you longer than 3 hours to set up or 3 hours to take down.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Because we provide shade structure backstage for everybody to share, that sort of thing. So we're discouraging that type of behavior for strike week so that people can really participate in the camp strike.
In terms of burnout, so I'm Chicago based, and there's like me and my fiance and like 2 other people maybe that are in Chicago, and everyone else is pretty dispersed. And so after the burn, getting like, we have a semi-trailer, but like unloading the trailer and doing that like final clean is really hard on those like few people in Chicago. And we found a good way, like before the burn, we do like a build weekend and people come in from out of town to like help pack the truck. But getting people to come back out again after the burn is really hard.
Constant
Do you have any suggestions for like the local team that gets burnt out?
Public shaming.
Public shaming.
Public shaming.
Yeah.
Honestly, have the nastiest pair of pink furry boots. Remember furry boots when those were the thing on Playa? Now we have 2 pairs.
Are you saying they're not?
Nasty.
No, really?
When people don't show up for shifts, they F up, they have to wear them for a day.
Oh, yeah.
That's cool.
It worked like a charm.
That's public shaming.
We actually have a cone of shame. We got a dog collar. And then we got an amazing little like little sticker that says salty old cunt. Inside of the dog collar, and we make people wear it. Like whenever they're getting in fights or dramas, they have to be put in the dog phone. And it's incredibly effective. Not yet. No, and it hangs like right in the living area, so anybody can choose to give someone the code.
You said you made your build day, fun, that sort of
Yeah.
thing, and I know that it's hard to get people to come, but even on our trailer unloading, we make it a party. We put a pop-up tent. We have food. We have music. We try to make it as fun as possible.
Lots of photos.
But it's still like the year we had 37 cases of norovirus. People didn't show up for that. While I was unloading the trailer.
I have a quick question. Is there anybody in the room, show of hands, that is in like an crap this year, like it's coming in hot, like we lost our leads for our camp, now what are we doing? We really need some. I'd love to hear from either of you.
That's basically what caused me to come to this one. It's kind of a tie between several of them, but I thought maybe I might learn something a little extra. We're in, this year is going to be our 3rd year with the leads that we have now. And before that, for at least 10 years, I don't know the exact history because it goes further than my participation in this camp. One guy did, I'm going to say, more than 50% of the off-playa planning, anything that happened during the year. And 2 other people helped him with maybe the other half, so maybe they did a quarter each. So it was 3 people leading the entire camp. Many of us, we have at least 50% return rate every year, and we've got a lot of people who, come and not come, and back and forth. So everybody knew how to set up camp. I think we could have done that by ourselves, but the off-year stuff didn't work. We didn't know anything about that. So all of a sudden, all 3 of these people couldn't go 1 year.
We have about 5 minutes left, and I'll give you like minute?
Yeah, so-
What are you facing right now that's like a real benchmark or a hurdle that is running from that you really need some insight on specifically or something?
We are definitely planning, a lot of the stuff that you guys have talked about, succession planning and things like that, prevention of burnout, things like that, but I'm not sure what we don't know about this, because this is the only time in history.
Things come up, you can reach out to Candy S, Camp Development Support Team. We got you back. We also have an advisory program if anybody's like in a, in a pickle or really needs some help. That's why we're here. And I wanted to give you a minute as well.
We've got a bit of the throwing the torch on the floor situation going on. We had a first meeting last weekend, but I guess where everyone's sitting around watching it burn in the middle. That's how we've been. We've been going for like 6-7 years. And we went up 50% last year because there was a wedding in the camp, and that increase I think has pushed the core 2 or 3 people who ran the infrastructure, or at least they ran the planning system. They're not coming this year, so that's where we're at. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's where we're at. So so if anyone's got specific advice on, like, we're pretty well run, and like people show up and they do their stuff. There's just no coordinate. There's no one wanting to lead. There's like a lot of everyone wants to do their thing.
Don't pick up the whole torch.
Yeah.
Share the torch.
Yeah.
And
I was just gonna say, make sure somebody's gonna fill out that questionnaire.
Yes.
I don't know what thing.
The question,
use
it's
your
true.
buzzwords. You can always ask placement to see in previous year. If you can't get it from your.
No, we've got all the Google, everything. There's like, we're pretty organized. So the information's there. It's more. Actually, what's really missing is the creative vision for the camp, because. We've got to make a new. Anyway, we built this big thing every year, and I think everyone's like, we've had enough of building that, so we're going to do something different. But it will probably work out. I guess it will work out.
I have a really brief comment on that.
The Phoenix, right?
This year the theme is metamorphosis. And in other volunteer activities that I'm a part of, there's a saying that if no one wants to do it, perhaps it's not worth doing. Don't get stuck on what you did before when the support for doing that goes away. Find the people who want to put in the work and say, let's do something new. And so actually this year, the thing that we're doing to get our camp through is our 10-person camp. Last year we were 20, and we just made the call, we are going to cut our camp in half. We're going to cut the population in half, the footprint in half, the events in half, and we're going to do something fun for a year. It's just going to be like a joke camp for 1 year.
You don't have to do something just because you've always done it before. It's a phrase I hate in Burning Man or in the professional world. Oh, we've always done it that way. You're probably doing it wrong.
What about mergers? Like, we're considering, like, one of the things that's on the table is merging with other groups. Has someone done that? How has that worked out? Merging, or like finding another group that we can sort of subsume into, because we've got a ton of infrastructure and all, I don't know. Has anyone done that, and has that worked?
So we're still a smaller camp called Whoop Whoop last year because they had like 20 people and they didn't get placement for whatever reason, so they just came on with us. That's why Melody. So find a bigger camp that already has the infrastructure and the vibe and the tone that think you do well with, and then become absorbed by them.
Yeah.
That's easier than kind of matching the camp.
Absorbed.
Right? So do what they're already doing and see if it works, rather than trying to force it.
We have a minute left, so I'm going to just wrap out all our questions. Let these guys say something, and also say if anything comes up, you need guidance, help, connection to, please email campsupport@burningman.org. And if the core CDS team members don't know, we have advisory committee people that we can ping to help you answer those questions. Wink, 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 and we can connect you with them, and they'll be happy to help you.
I'm always happy.
Is there anything you guys wanted to quickly say?
Yes. You're all eager. You're all here. You're all learning. My question is, what is your exit strategy? Because if you don't have one, you are setting yourself up for failure long-term and permanent. Find your succession plan now. Start on it now. Ask every person who's a leader in your camp to find someone to train, just as a backup. Doesn't have to be to push them out of their role or for them to go away, but just so you have backup.
Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank
you.